Hekate is well pleased by offerings, but she's fine without them. And she is a goddess that's very much about sovereignty. She'll provide, light those torches and lead you in the right direction, but ultimately it's your free will. You can do the work or not. It's really no skin off of her nose. I am a committed herbalist, so I use a lot of plant spirit magic, but other people use different spirits. But you don't need gods or goddesses either. I mean, people are sometimes surprised when I say that, when I spend so much time writing about Hekate. You don't need to believe she's an actual embodied goddess flying around somewhere. A lot of the spirits I work with are animal spirits and plant spirits, as opposed to like servitors, or I might have a plant that's my servitor, but I don't just kind of have a servitor. I have like these natural spirits that I work with that to me seem much more tangible and approachable.
I don't really work with plants, although I should. My natal chart says, like, girl, you've got a strong fourth house, like, get into the dirt, right? But yeah. I'm a little bit afraid of nature. I didn't realize this before until, like, literally, like, 2-3 months ago, that when people work with plants, they're working with the spirits of the plants as well. Like, for whatever reason, I just thought, oh, you're just going to pick some plants and, like, make some concoction and, it's almost like a medicinal thing, almost like a pharmacist. But but there's a difference between a pharmacist versus, I guess, what you do, which is you're not just doing it for medicinal reasons, but you're also working with the actual, I guess, the intelligence of that plant.
Well, and I think for me, that's the thing, like plants have consciousness. And I think, a lot of people, like you're not alone, a lot of people are intimidated from working with plants. It's it's a natural thing. Once you kind of get over that timidity and find a plant that you can connect with, then it just opens up this whole world that you don't even know exists. It's kind of like, I don't know if you work with spirits at all, like servitors or entities, but it's kind of like if the first time you figure out that the spirit world is really active, once you can connect to a plant, you're like, oh, but then there's this whole other spirit world that now I have access to. I always say that if there's one form of magic that we know absolutely is true, it's plant magic, because plants and humans, we need each other. So if there should be one form of magic that we can access, it should be plants, because we coexist, right? In a way that more abstract forms, I think, are more difficult to, we don't necessarily need those spirits as much as we need plants. Plants give us breath.
I guess the first question that comes to my mind when somebody says that they work closely with plants and they have an affinity for plants is, do you talk to trees? Like, do you see, like, like when you see, like, The Hobbit and stuff, that movie, and you see, like, faces on trees and they're, like, talking to you in, like, very, like, ancient voices? Is that what we're talking about?
Not me so much. I'm, I guess, if you want to talk about, like, the clairs and how we perceive things that are in the spirit world, I tend to just kind of have thoughts in my head from the plants. So it's almost like we have a silent conversation. But the plants do speak to me. Like, different plants have different personalities. And some of that is like the standard, you can go and get culpepers or, another old herbal from hundreds of years ago and look up. And this is really cool. Like, if you're new to plant magic, look at some of these old herbals, and they're just, the energy and what you learn is really stripped down. In my intro course, I just talk about, getting a plant that you connect with. It can be something as simple as basil that you pick up at the supermarket. Bring basil home and just practice that kind of opening of your cord, your energetic cords, in the same way you would when you were casting a circle or connecting with crystals. Like, open up to the plant and see what the plant has to say.
I mean, I have a real love of flowers. So, like, so let's say that I go, like, I'm in Bali right now, so I'm walking down the streets and they're just covered with fallen blossoms of frangipani, plumeria blossoms. So let's say that I always pick them up, and I always, like, carry a bouquet with me. So how would I open up to it?
If you have an affinity already for those flowers, then you've already kind of done the first thing. You've identified a flower that you naturally connect with. So what I would say is to get into your meditative space, however that is, get yourself in that state of calm awareness, and just sit with the plant. Much like if you were going to do yoga with somebody, or do, how you can do exercises with someone where you mirror them? Yeah. Like, that's almost like what you're going to do with the plant, is you're going to stretch out towards the plant, open up, and see, and just open and flow into the plant. The same way you would meditate or connect with any other spirit. So if you're totally new to this, I would say, create your space, your contained energy, however you do it. And then really the trick is to envision that cord, like your energy cord, your energy field, moving forward towards the plant in a really welcoming way. Now, flowers can be more complex, and it really depends on, if you have a natural affinity. It's like any sort of magic. If you kind of naturally go there, it'll be a lot easier. But some flowers, can be more complex. Rose is one that a lot of people naturally love roses. But rose is a very magical flower. A lot of us think that rose is just for love, but you can use the different colors of roses, like yellow or white. So there's lots of different ways that you can use flowers in magic, but it really, I think it does just start by opening up and just going into the plant and really envisioning the plant as a sentient being.
This reminds me of a Japanese anime, one of my favorite ones. It's called Please Save My Earth. And it's about an alien race that has been reincarnated as junior high school kids in Japan. And one of the main characters, she's this reincarnation of this alien who loves nature on Earth. And so in the Japanese anime, what you'll see is that in her incarnation as like the 11, 12-year-old Japanese schoolgirl, she and the plants and nature, they love each other. So when she's going towards plants, you'll see, like in the anime, you can see the flower slightly opening up just a little bit more to intake all that love that she has. And she doesn't even know that she's giving it. And so, like, when it receives, like, all the sparkles from her, then it emits, like, little sparkles itself. Like, I've received your love. Thank you. I love you, too.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like.
Oh, my God.
Except those sparkles that we put out, they can intermingle. And the sparkles from the plant have properties. So, like if you're working with, mugwort is a really common one that's fairly accessible. So if you want to do some kind of journey in your astral projection, and you want to connect to the sparkles, the spirit of mugwort, those sparkles, when you say, hey, I really want to do this journey, the sparkles will be like, yeah, that's really cool. That's what we exist for. We're happy that you asked, because we can help.
Can you still, like, even if you don't believe in any of it whatsoever, can you still, if you're imbibing it or working with it in any sort of way, are you actually still communicating with it?
Well, I think even if you're just out and you walk by a tree and you say, hey, that's a tree, that tree is still a tree, and if you take psychoactive substances, even if you don't believe in their magical properties, they'll still have some effect. But it's that attunement between your intention and the plant's will, like the plant's consciousness, where the magic happens. It's that enmeshment that where we come together with the plant or anything. It works the same. I've always found crystals are more difficult to kind of get an attunement with. But even if we have like a spirit, like a spirit guide, that's really what we're, it's where we come together, where our sparkles meet.
I used to work as a makeup artist when I was in college. So, there's a way to do makeup by the numbers, and you can make everybody look pretty good, Like you can put the dark color here and whatever, and everybody's going to look fine. But then you have like the artists who are really in tune with the colors, the client, everything. And then they can take the same almost technique, and yet what they do on somebody's face is completely different. Like it actually brings out that person. So it's not just that they're beautiful or they're pretty, because you can make anybody look beautiful or pretty, but it's like they're radiant.
They capture like the essence of the person. I know what you mean. My sister's quite a skilled makeup artist. I'm not. But my sister my sister can really bring, that magic out in someone. And you think like the plant has that magic too. So it's like with the right practitioner, it's like the excellent makeup artist is that you can bring that out of the plants. Things like plants and spirits and animal spirits, they have like a job. They have a mundane job, but they also have a spirit world job. And when we approach them sincerely and want to work with them, we honor the plants. That's really about practicing witchcraft, as opposed to the occult.
I'm in Bali right now, which is so lush.
Oh, yeah.
Anything can grow in Bali. And in fact, part of the offerings that people give to spirits is every single day. They make a leaf boat and they put flowers in it and incense. So every single day they're giving offerings and working with plants. It's just a part of their mundane life. And that's something that a lot of Westerners are disconnected from.
I think it is. For me, like as a Hecatean and someone who is definitely like a student of the myths of Hekate and Medea, pharmaca, this is what they called witchcraft then, and witchcraft was about working with plants and animals. So it is, I always say I practice modern witchcraft, but it's really like so traditional that we go back to Hekate, who is often called the original witch. Like she was the first witch created in kind of the Olympic Titan pantheon, those two pantheons. She's the OW, not the OG.
You know what? When I meet like a really cool femme person, I'm gonna be like, "You're an OW. You're an original witch."
OW.
OW. Let's say that somebody wants to start working with plants, and they do live in a big city. I used to live in Seoul, and before then I lived in New York City. There's not, like, you can go to a park, I guess, but it's like, you're just like, well, the grass, the dogs peed on it, and so half the time you're just sort of like, Once I, like, saw a guy foraging for weeds and stuff, like, but I guess almost like edible weeds or something like that, like in Central Park. And I was like, whoa, I mean, that's hardcore.
I was just in New York City and spent some time, we walked through Central Park, and I was like, shit, there are so many plants in here. I said, and then I was calculating, like, if every witch in New York City started to come to Central Park and to say, get oak leaves, because that's oak is really great for magic, and it's really accessible. You just bring it home, you can use it fresh, you can let it dry. It's super easy, burn it as an incense. Every witch started, like, taking, like, say, 20 oak leaves a year. The oak trees would grow better, and they would be more hardy, because no one's really taking care of them. They're just sitting there. Plants need to be pruned or deadheaded, where you remove the buds, and that way it encourages them to grow. So I just started thinking about all the plants in Central Park and what I would do, and how many witches could use Central Park if they wanted to. We could start a movement where the real witches of New York start pruning all the plants in Central Park, and then the trees will grow more.
You know what? That story went completely the opposite of how I expected, because I thought you were doing calculations and thinking, oh, like if all the witches like took the oak leaves, then there'll be no leaves left. This idea of nature is something that we take from, and then it's done. It's like this finite supply. But you're bringing up this idea of nature needing to interact with people, and by us taking it in a spiritual way, instead of depleting it, we're actually helping it.
Yeah, it's not like you're going to go in and strip the trees bare. If you want to stand more in your power, take a branch of an oak tree, tell the tree what you're doing. And oak, the mighty oak is a very proud tree, and he'll be really happy to serve you in that way and helping you stand in your personal power. But what is an oak tree? Like when you think about what does an oak tree represent, like you said, we're talking about spirits. Well, the spirit of oak is a very proud man, for example, a king, right? Like oak is often seen as the king of the forest. Like I'm an occult herbalist, which makes people kind of think, oh, okay, so there's more to this than just picking dandelion. There's about how you connect to the spirit of the dandelion. The dandelion is a member of Hecate's garden dating back, thousands of years. And dandelion has properties mundane properties of being detoxifying, but it also has the spiritual properties of being detoxifying. And I think that's the beauty of plants. Like, you can't work with a demon in a mundane situation and say, well, today I just have a little bit of a headache, so I want you to make my headache better. The demon's going to be like, no, what? But a dandelion, like dandelion will be like, if you're feeling sluggish and maybe you are drinking too much last night and you're sipping dandelion tea, the dandelion tea can just be, the cure for your hangover, or it can also be a way for you to do protection magic. So I guess I'm really practical about witchcraft, and I love the fact that plants have this kind of diversity. Like you think of crystals, I love crystals, but you think like crystals, other than throwing them at people and looking pretty, they're really only good for magical purposes, your spiritual purposes, But plants, they look good, and they have mundane properties and spiritual properties.
So if there was somebody who, and this is what you do, you bring together like this plant magic, but then you also work with Hekate. So you're kind of doing, I guess, the more, I don't know, like the deity, like what we consider like very occulty stuff, but then the very grounded witchy stuff, and you're mixing it together. I mean, the amount of, I guess, like correspondences you can layer on top of each other, it's just like people who practice like that syncretic sort of hoodoo on top of hermetic magic.
And to me, that's my witchcraft. It's about the spell work. Like, I find the goddesses fascinating. I love the lore and the mythology, but that doesn't make me a witch. That could make me, I'm an academic, so I get to talk about the goddesses in the context of, teaching classes. But to me, what makes me a witch is crafting and casting spells.
Can you define what you mean by spell work? Because a lot of people, they're going to do law of attraction stuff. I am driving a Ferrari right now, and they envision that present tense, and they think that like the universe is going to give them a Ferrari. Is that crafting a spell?
No, that's a wish. So wishes are wonderful, right? But this person who I was talking to, it's funny that you brought this up. So they were talking about candle magic not working. And I said, well, if you just have the candle there and think your intention, that's like a wish. You might as well, like it's like we do with your birthday cake. When you blow out the candle, it's beautiful. Like, I'm not criticizing it. But a candle spell involves knowing, like, for example, you choose your color. So you choose a purple candle. But why is it purple? Not just because someone told you to use a purple candle for this, but the color purple has certain energetic properties that lend themselves. I'll stick with the theme of personal power. So, purple is the color royalty. It has sovereign, all these kinds of great properties. So when you're lighting that candle and doing that spell, the goal is to connect with the power of purple, and the flame releases the power of purple. So when you think about how this works, it's all about intention. Yeah, you've got to have a really good, strong verbs, short sentences, be scarce with words, intention. That's just right to the point. But when you speak those words into that candle, it's the fire and the color that you're activating.
You're layering correspondences, and I guess
the
correspondences, are they? Like, let's say that you grow up in a family and, I don't know, some weird culture where the color purple was considered very evil, and it was something that you would only put on, like, dead people and people that you hate. Does that affect it, or is purple just the frequency of that color? Is it universal?
And this is a really cool thing about magic, right? It's like, well, yes, there are some standard energetic properties of purple as a hue. Like if you look at what the way light reflects and how we perceive purple. Like there's all that stuff. But if you really believe that purple is only for evil people, and you have a strong will, then that will override kind of how purple exists as an objective thing. It's got to be the intuition. It's got to be about the practitioner, and that blend with the standard definitions or the standard properties. It can't just be, this thing I'm here and I'm going to use it for this, even though I feel really different about it. Like when you're new to the craft, that it just, as you build up your confidence, because I think confidence that you can work magic is probably the only thing, the thing that matters. Because if you're confident, you'll choose correspondences that make sense to you. You'll be confident when it comes to writing your own spells. Because the thing, I get a lot of the people who take like my intro course, or new people who are in the witches realm, they want that. They want the right by the book. Cyndi, tell me how to do this spell to get this new job. And I'm like, you gotta go and buy yourself a big book of correspondences, start writing it, show me what you did, and then we'll talk. Because the strongest spells are always going to be the ones that we develop ourselves, because spells are an extension of who we are. So, if you want to look at old grimoires, you know how some people love those grimoires and conjuring demons and all that stuff, and if it's in Latin, it must be 100% true. Which is all well and good, but if it doesn't speak to you, we are the center of our own magic. So as long as, if those grimoires speak to you and they are who you are at your core, then that's fantastic. But if it's not, don't be afraid to kind of go off book and do what makes sense to you. And it takes trial and error. It's not, sometimes when you say to someone, okay, so we're going to do some candle magic, and what I need you to do is go and sit with that candle, that purple candle, for an hour and contemplate purple. People can be like, I just want to feel more empowered. Like, but you will if you spend an hour contemplating the color purple. Meditation and trance work is so kind of popular right now, and so many different magical schools have everybody going on journeys and doing trance. But when you open up to a correspondence, you're getting into that altered state of consciousness as well. Because you're going beyond the mundane aspects of, of whatever it is you're working with.
And I think it was particularly Aidan Wachter who mentioned this, about the ability that a witch needs to develop to say, well, this reality is real, but so can this completely different reality. Like the ability to hold multiple sorts of viewpoints at the same time. And even if you're just slightly out from mundane reality, like even just the contemplation or the consideration of this different reality is helpful. Like, and that's what worked for me, because I wrote about it in Patheos Pagan, how about 2 years ago I was still a hardcore atheist and extreme material science person. And yet I kept doing magic because I got results. And the reason why I'm looking back and analyzing it and unpacking it now is that I was willing to suspend disbelief in being in a completely neutral place. And just being neutral was enough to get shit rolling.
A lot of the spell work that I do and also teach in my courses is about getting yourself ready for those opportunities. It's about growth mindset magic. It's not about just, I want a Ferrari, so I think Hekate should just deliver a Ferrari in my driveway. I don't think witchcraft works like that. And I think if you think it does, that you'll be super disappointed.
So I noticed, like, when I was doing magic, one of the things that happened in my life was that things would come into my life, and I had the choice of either embracing it or choosing something else. Job opportunities came into my life, and this is after I was doing Jupiter magic.
Okay.
So it's not like the money fell into my lap. It's not like, there was like 1 or 2 occasions where money just appeared in my bank account. I had to work, but it was more like what the magic did was that it helped the hustle. Like, it was sort of like, okay, I need to make more money. How's that going to happen? Oh, I didn't have to look for it and jobs just came to me. But, I still had to work for it, but it's that the opportunities, like the doors were opened. And that's when I was just like, okay, this is what magic is. Magic is, I didn't have to spend, like weeks and months being frustrated looking for a job. I still had to work it to make the money, but at least the doors were open for me.
And I think that's what magic does, right? And if you're ready, then you can go right through. And one more thing, you mentioned Jupiter. The other super cool thing about plants is that they're all ruled by the planets. So if you already do planetary magic, if you were to get into plant magic, then you, for example, could work with plants who are ruled by Jupiter.
What's an example of a plant that's ruled by Jupiter?
I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. I knew you were going to say that. I was like, what's a Jupiter plant? I've been doing a lot of work with Pluto plants lately, so I'm going to talk about a Pluto plant that I kind of have, that I'm kind of crushing on right now, okay? So my Pluto plant, because it's Pluto time of the year for me, and I have so much Pluto energy in my chart that I am, like I am of the dark. Like I am like the dark, swampy creature.
Oh, you're a Pluto babe.
Yeah. So I love this time of the year because I grow a few poisons and I wild harvest different poison plants. So I have my foxglove, which is ruled by Pluto. So foxglove is a plant of the underworld that you would do if you were trying to do an underworld working. So for me, working with Hekate and Medea, that's about going into the underworld for spiritual work or for healing. So foxglove is ruled by Pluto, and foxglove has properties that are of the underworld, of deep work, shadow taming work. Mugwort is a way that you would temper that energy. So it's really cool when you were talking about correspondences earlier. I'm like, should I mention like how the planets and all of this are factored in with plants so you can learn what plants are ruled by what? Which I think that's kind of falling out of style too a little bit. But there are some older herbals that you can buy. Like the Master Book of Herbalism is a good, really accessible one that's been around, I think, for 40 or 50 years. But you can still buy it. It's still in print.
If I had known about plants back when I was doing a lot of Jupiter magic, I could have done my Jupiter magic, and let's say, I'm just going to make this up. Let's say that juniper was like a Jupiter plant. I don't know. And then I made some sort of, I don't know, tea or something out of it. So like, is that how you would incorporate that into your magic? Like you would make a tea and you'd drink it in your ceremony, or you'd offer it to Jupiter?
Or burn it or whatever. And you could also, like, I don't know how you were doing planetary magic, but when I do planetary magic, I draw down that planet's energy into my working, kind of like, and add it to my spell. So if you had like juniper or hawthorn or something like that you wanted, like a Jupiter plant, you would call upon Jupiter to kind of activate that. It would be one technique that you could use. Or offer it as, so there's lots of different ways to incorporate planetary magic with plant magic. And the system, it goes back to like the doctrine of Solomon and really ancient texts, the way that the plants and the planets are, the way they correspond.
Maybe it's because of chaos magic, but a lot of people who do planetary magic, it seems like they kind of don't focus a lot on the smells or the plants or anything like that. Because incense, a lot of times, are plants, right? You're burning the plants. Yeah. But actually, the more that I'm learning about even that sort of traditional grimoire magic, smells, the incense, is essential. I think it was Balthazar Black who said, if you don't have the right incense, the magic isn't going to work as well. And now I'm starting to make that connection from what you're saying. Oh, it's because the spirit of the plant.
Yeah, the spirit of the plant, which is attuned to a planet, when you burn it, that spirit is back to the idea of the sparkles. The sparkles are meeting, the smoke and the energy of the planet come together, which makes your magic so much more powerful. And it's about those layers of correspondences.
I think this is huge, like especially for a lot of the new witches who are watching this. Incense, it's not just about the smells, guys. I mean, it is, because anything that you enjoy smelling or that reminds you of something, that's magical. But it's also the actual spirits of the plants. That's a huge reason why incense is so essential to your magical working. So if your magic ritual is like not giving you the results that you want, and you're not using incense, or you're using like incense that, I don't know, like you just bought from the dollar store and who knows what's in it, you may want to consider like looking more closely into burning the right plants.
And what you're picking, pick your incenses accordingly, carefully. And then when you burn them, think about what's actually happening is that smoke, because we perceive the smell, but what's really happening is the smoke. Right? That's like like the smoke is altering the molecular structure of the air in the environment. But it also works in the world of pure force. Like the kind of the opposite. Like the physical structure of air is altered, but so is the kind of etheric structure of the world of force that you've evoked into your space. So that's why incense can be so powerful, because it actually is changing the structure of your working, of the environment that you're working in.
Like right now, my mind is like literally being blown because now I'm starting to realize, like, even thinking from like a mundane material science point of view, of course, like the air that we breathe, the molecular structure, it is being changed. I mean, there's certain plants that you burn, and it's like you inhale the fumes, you're going to get high. Or you inhale the fumes, you're going to get a headache. In fact, it's like these, you know, like, why do we have smoke detectors? Why do we have carbon monoxide detectors? It's these airborne particles that we're breathing in that are skin, you know, the semi-permeable thing that we have. It's also like the smoke, the things that in the air are also going through all our membranes. Of course, it makes perfect sense that burning plants, ingesting plants, whatever it is that you're doing with the plants, but especially burning, it's going to create like a really fast effect.
But if someone was new, like one of your viewers was new and wanted just to start with working with plants, even something like poppy seeds, which you can get like, in bulk, are psychoactive. And if you have poppy seeds around and you can make a simple poppy seed oil, even like having that in an open dish will start to kind of release, poppy seeds are sacred to Persephone. They're very underworld. So that will start the oils even work through the air. Because one thing I found is that a lot of people who live in urban areas can't burn things in their residence these days. So diffusers, if you think about what a diffuser is, doing the exact same thing, but you can make your own blends with whatever, like poppy seeds and good quality olive oil. You can let that soak for a few days and try it on your diffuser and experiment, with the difference that it makes in your environment, just having those molecules in the air. Flying ointments are really popular these days, and that's what the people who make flying ointments, that's what they're putting in, these like little tiny bits of belladonna or little tiny bits of wolfsbane. With wolfsbane is just aconite by a different name. So they have these really cool psychoactive properties, but they're super challenging. So, start with poppy seeds, start with salt, and work your way up. In the course I teach on modern Hekate and witchcraft, I do 3 levels of plants in each lesson. So if people are completely new, you can put eucalyptus oil with maybe some mint, something really simple, put it in their diffuser. Or if someone's kind of level 3, super advanced, then they can do the more complicated things.
One time it was like Saturnian magic, and I had to take like this really nasty smelling plant and burn it. But at that time, I didn't realize that there was spirits to the plants. I just thought it's bad smelling because Saturn, for whatever reason, just likes bad smells. I was only thinking about it from like an aesthetic, olfactory point of view. I wasn't thinking of the spirit, but now that I'm talking to you, now I'm just like, okay. So when I was putting the herbs, like I was covering my candle with that herb, I was literally putting the spirit with, the black candle and stuff on it and then lighting it. So there's all these elements coming into it. And that's part of what made the spell potent.
Exactly. And a lot of the most potent herbs don't smell good.
Yeah. It's like Chinese medicine. All the stuff that's really good for your health, it tastes like shit.
So it's really cool when you start thinking about different systems in the world and how similar they really are to what we call witchcraft, I guess, in the West. But TCM is super witchy when it's done by, like you said, that person in the back shop and there's like a cage with some live chickens. Right? You know how these things work scientifically, right? They work, as above, so below. Like the way things work scientifically or physically, they tend to work the same way in the spirit world too, at least when it comes to plants.
Can you explain that more?
Smoke changes the molecules in the air. So smoke changing the molecules in the air, it's the same way when you imbibe something. So if you're imbibing it purely with your physical being, like you said, super mundane, it will work in your physical being. But if you open that gateway, it will also work in your energetic being, whatever you call that, your purely energetic body. It'll work the same way, right down, at the molecular level as well.
So guys, tell us what you think. Have you considered using plant magic did you even know that you're working with the spirits of plants? Because I didn't know. And how are you, now that you know this, how are you going to start incorporating plants and animals into your magic? So Cyndi, thank you so much for joining me. This has been such an awesome talk.
Well, thank you. It's been so much fun.